If you need any more information or promotion stuff, just keep in touch with me, and I'll get it up to you as soon as possible. Well, the great news is that Q have actually placed the first order, which is 36 bottles of the Narcissi fragrance, which is only a small amount, but it actually starts the whole process off, and then all the other stores will actually be genuinely interested. So it's great.
They have actually placed a real order.
They placed the order of 36, yeah. So, I mean, it's a small order, but that's fine. I mean, that'll suit me fine, because I know that as soon as they get into there, it's such a high-profile place, it'll actually spread through the system as well.
This sounds like a cause for celebration, Pete.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, get the champagne out.
In fact, there's only one way for a man like Pete to celebrate his first mainland sale of the new perfume. There isn't a huge choice of new hats on a place as remote as this, but Pete's determined it's time he found one.
OK, fine. Let's try that on.
Try, and if it's too big, we can find a smaller size. What about one of the camouflage ones?
Oh, yeah. Then...
They all adjust at the back, so they should fit any head.
Fantastic. Look at that. Marvellous.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, is your hat covering a bald patch or something?
No.
Let's have a look then. Take your hat off then.
Yes.
Oh, a little bit of a bald patch. Yeah,
Yes.
that's all. Well, I think that's good then, isn't it?
Yes.
That's good.
I don't mind that in a man's.
It'll be a month or two yet before Pete knows whether his initial breakthrough at Kew really will pay handsome dividends, and probably even longer for the locals to get used to the first new hat Pete's donned for as long as anyone can remember.
Could you do this for me?
For Nigel up at the Airfare Cafe and his son Greg, after losing contact with each other for so long, life will never quite be the same again.
No problem.
Are you busy this evening?
I'm not busy this evening.
Do you want to come out with us to the meal?
Greg's reunion with his father has been a great success, but now Greg's moving on. He's applied to train as a Buddhist monk in Sri Lanka, and tomorrow he leaves for the mainland.
You're not tempted to stay here?
Not at this point in time. I need to be looking for something.
Well, I hope you find it. Good luck.
Yeah, I hope so too, but we'll see.
So tonight, Greg's being joined by Nigel, Carol, Heike and other friends and family for a farewell dinner on St Mary's. It could be the last time they see Greg for years. Greg's sitting next to Heike's new young nurse, Sarah. And much to everyone's surprise, it soon becomes patently obvious that Greg only has eyes for one person in the room. Next morning, and they're all up early at the airport to see Greg off. The plan is for Nigel to accompany his son for the flight to Bristol and a visit to his grandmother before saying farewell to Greg, who'll then be travelling on to Sri Lanka. Greg and Sarah really seem to have taken a shine to each other. Then it's time for the goodbyes.
Get in quickly, it's raining.
British weather.
And for Sarah, perhaps, a moment to think about reassessing her plans. As things turn out, her brief encounter with Greg will have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. On the surface, the second Saturday in June looks just like the start of any other summer weekend on Scilly. But from the break of dawn, rumours have been quickly circulating amongst the islanders of terrible news from the North Atlantic.
We have the breaking news today. We got at about 8 o'clock this morning, a very disturbing call from a couple of people who told us they feared that there was a problem.
Ginger Jim has been in contact with the emergency services throughout the night.
Use the sat phone to phone Falmouth Coast Guard. Falmouth Coast Guard's then coordinated with the United States Coast Guard's rescue centre and dispatched a Hercules aircraft to the search area. And
Posted. A very unfortunate news. We have put some of the interviews that we've had with the guys over the past hour or so.
Harry, what's happened?
Well, we had the bad news this morning that the Silly Boys challenge is off.
What's happened?
The boat's capsized. I know, we're a bit sort of shocked. I mean, I came to work this morning just expecting a normal day on Saturday morning, and it's been mad. We've had people call up. Obviously, it's just gone crazy this morning with trying to get the information out there. It has capsized, it's been lost. They were in the water for 7 hours. They have had mild hypothermia. The Silly Boys challenge has ended. Now, we will keep you posted with developments during the day today. We're going to hear from some people who are still coming to terms with the shock that after all of the training, after all the work that has been put in, it's all falling apart.
Many islanders, including the Reverend David, are still completely unaware of the boys' capsize and subsequent rescue by a passing ship.
Have you heard the news about the Silly Boys?
No, I haven't. Haven't heard anything.
The boat's capsized.
Oh gosh. Were they safe? I mean, what's...
They're all okay.
And the boat's just lost completely?
The boat apparently is gone.
Gosh. It's incredible, isn't it? Well, they're fortunate they're safe, but heavens above.
For people closely involved in helping organising the row, like young Vicky Heaney, it's a huge blow.
The only thing to say is thank goodness they're okay. That's the important thing at the moment, that they're all okay and safe. Yeah.
They were in the water for 7 hours, I gather.
I think so. I haven't heard many of the details. I think we've got some updates coming soon from the Coast Guard.
The families of the rowers are still reeling from the rapid unfolding of events. Anne Euler is the grandmother to the youngest rower, Joby, just 19.
I'm very sad for them because they were so upbeat, you know, but they're safe. They're safe, that's all we can say.
A local news crew's already in action up at the home of rower Chris Jenkins's mother, Ange.
Have you managed to speak to Chris yet?
No, not yet. All I have heard is over the radio. Chris's wife rang about 7 o'clock this morning. There was 35 knots winds, so that's what, 40 plus miles an hour, isn't it? Something like that. And big seas.
There were big seas?
Big seas. But that's what I've been told.
What went through your mind?
Oh dear.
We reckon about 450 miles off the North American coast off at Massachusetts. The Silly Boys boat seemed to encounter large waves and it didn't right itself. It capsized and didn't bounce back, as it were.
The fact that the challenge is off, the fact that they were going so well, the shock must be terrible for them.
They capsized and then the boat didn't turn around, and it went under. Yeah. So it's gone forever.
Later that day, the big dog show to raise money for Heike's surgery has been overshadowed by events on the other side of the Atlantic. Heike's new nurse, Sarah's been asked to be one of the judges and is putting on a brave face.
Third place, Sheila.
It's all a bit weird, Heike, after all that dramatic news about the Silly Boys.
Oh yeah, poor things.
What have you heard about that?
Well, I only heard that a huge wave, about as big as a town hall, capsized the boat, and the boat then sank. And I think they had to stay in the water for 7 hours until sort of a huge ship came, a tanker, and picked them up out of the water. So they are pretty badly hypothermic, maybe, but they're all alive, and that's the main thing.
Down in the harbour, the boats are starting to return to St Mary's from their day trips to the off-islands, with many passengers unaware of the overnight news. The tourist office just behind the harbour has had a chance to post up the latest official information, which has been coming in all day.
We're worried that they'll come back feeling like they're failures, but of course they're not at all.
What a shock there.
Yeah, well, we heard it on the campsite this morning. Someone was in the shower block and someone came in and said about it. Couldn't quite believe it.
It must be quite annoying to get that far and then just like something like that to happen to them.
What a shock.
Yeah.
People are just asking me if they've abandoned the trip altogether.
It's really affected everyone, hasn't it?
Yes, I'm very, very surprised, you know, what's happened. So it's really sad.
You put your heart and soul into this project. It's a bad day for you, Jim, but
Yeah, well, so, it's not just me. I mean, there's a big team behind us. So there's a lot of people have put a lot of effort into this.
But they're okay, that's the key thing.
Yeah, that's the main thing, yeah. The boys are okay. We were, very worried about them.
A momentous day in the long seafaring history of these remote islands is at last coming to an end. The Reverend David has made his way to the chapel just behind the harbour.
Well, here we are at the end of a day that began, I guess, like any other. We wondered how the city boys were doing. We imagined them out there rowing somewhere across the Atlantic. And then suddenly the news came in that there had been a disaster, the boat had sunk, but thank God they were safe. And yet I think there was another feeling sort of playing there under the surface as well, because all those hopes and dreams, not just the 4 lads in the boat, but everyone on the islands had built up over the last months. Suddenly, what about that dream? There it was at the bottom of the Atlantic and shattered. And it was almost like a bereavement. And so there was a tug between immense relief that they were safe and yet the end of a dream, the end of hopes. There wouldn't be a flotilla of ships going out to the Bishop Rock Lighthouse to welcome them home. There wouldn't be a triumphant entry as they rowed into St Mary's Harbour. What would there be? And how do they feel? We can only imagine how they feel. Relief that they've been saved, but immense sadness perhaps, and the loss of their dreams, of their hopes. And how will they feel when they come home? And what will we say? How will we react? How will we help them at the end of that time? So perhaps a time to reflect as the light dies at the end of another day. We pray that even then there may be light shining in the darkness.
The Reverend David has a tough task ahead. Will he be able to bring together this shocked community in the light of the dramatic events of the last 24 hours and draw from them the strength they'll need to cope with what's happened? On the Isles of Scilly, young Greg has been preparing to fly to Sri Lanka and a brand new life as a Buddhist monk.
I've been looking at Buddhism for a while now, and I'm kind of hoping that it will lead to some meaning in my life.
But his plans to leave Scilly for a life of celibacy have been thrown into confusion by his growing interest in Sarah, Heike's new young veterinary nurse. And for Toby from St Martin's, the book of photographs about life on the islands he's spent years putting together is at last completed.
It is a labour of love, and you know, it's just amazing to see it coming off the presses now.
Now Toby's planning a spectacular launch party for the book. And the attempt by 4 island men to row across the Atlantic has ended in disaster when their little boat capsized.
We can only imagine how they feel. Relief that they've been saved, but immense sadness perhaps, and the loss of their dreams, of their hopes.
It's a beautiful, balmy Sunday on the Isles of Scilly, 30 miles off the western coast of Cornwall. As the 5 scattered inhabited islands bask in the early morning sunlight, the islanders, and in particular the families of the rescued Scilly Boys rowers, are struggling to come to terms with yesterday's dramatic news from the other side of the Atlantic.
An attempt by 4 men from the Isles of Scilly to break the Atlantic rowing record has come to a dramatic end. 12 days into their journey, the Scilly Boys team boat capsized in rough weather and failed to right itself. It was a terrifying night for those back home. The rowers' families have spoken...
The boys nearly drowned after their boat capsized in a big storm 700 miles out of New York.
Well, obviously we were gobsmacked. Couldn't really believe it, but there we are. These things happen. There we go.
After 7 hours in the water, the 4 island men have been picked up by a passing oil tanker, which is now en route to Europe. The senior member of the crew is 44-year-old Chris Jenkins, a marine engineer. He has 2 daughters, Sophie and Evie, who are now busy making welcome home cards. Chris's ex-wife Sarah isn't sure what to expect.
How do you think the boys are all going to cope coming back?
I don't know. I mean, they'll have sort of a good week to think things through on the oil tanker that they're coming home on, so hopefully they'll sort of get a lot of things straight in their head on that bit. I would imagine Chris will just come and get straight back into work.
31-year-old Wayne Davey is an island paramedic whose medical knowledge helped during the boys' long ordeal in the water. He shared a cabin on the boat with Tim Garrett, a 26-year-old sports science graduate. Tim's father, Chris, is still shocked by what's happened.
Who can say what it's like to have been nearly dead? And nobody else, even the accounts, can't really convey the full horror of it, I don't think.
The 4th and youngest member of the crew is 19-year-old Joby Newton. He's the apple of his Granny Anne's eye.
I still feel just as proud of him as if they'd made it, you know, and they'd broken the record.
What's the first thing you'll do when you see Joby?
I don't know, give him a hug, but I don't know if he'll take it.
He's quite a tough guy, isn't he?
The Methodist minister, the Reverend David Easton, is aware of the shock and confusion, but is trying to draw something positive from what's happened.
Instead of standing here today ready to welcome home 4 Salonian lads, we could be here receiving 4 bodies, or probably more likely 4 missing persons somewhere in the Atlantic we know not where.
What kind of a reception are they going to get, do you think?
I think they'll get a very warm reception from everybody, because people have been following them, and then after the capsizing, and we're so relieved that they're safe. I think that's the overwhelming feeling here of, you know, just relief that they're all in one piece, really. But clearly, too, we wonder how they will feel, because they've put so much into this over the last year or so, especially the last few months, and it's, in a way, almost like a bereavement to them. So we're not quite sure how they will feel, and there's been quite a debate, really, on the island. I think you hear it on Radio Scilly and other times. I mean, should we throw a party for them, or should we step back a bit, because we're not quite sure whether they'll be wanting that at the moment. So there is that uncertainty, really.
This is a significant moment in the island life of the Reverend David. By coincidence, today he's organising one of the biggest annual get-togethers for the island's churchgoers, and he knows all eyes will be on him. People from all over the islands are heading off for David's big service, which this year is being held on the most southwesterly and remotest of the islands, St Agnes. It has a resident population of only about 80, so today the number of people here looks set to double. They're all heading to the western side of the island, to the tiny church, built in the early 19th century. It looks out onto the western rocks, which over the generations have become a graveyard for so many sailors.
Today is Father's Day, and one of the tasks of parents is to tell their children the stories about our past, where we've come from, and we all have stories to tell. And we've been reminded yesterday, for those of you who've heard the news, that the Scilly Boys, who were rowing from New York back to Scilly, their boat capsized. And there have been lots of rumours and different stories going around yesterday about what exactly happened out there in the Atlantic. Were they right in the water, or how long were they there, and where are they headed now? Well, when they get back to us and are able to tell us for themselves, we will know what happened. We will know the story. It will have been told. Now, I want some volunteers from the children, because I want you to give out all these stones. They're all in the bag here, and where we're going to sing, you go and give some to everybody, all right? Just hold on to that stone. We'll come back to that later on.
For as long as anyone can remember, Toby's been putting together a book about his life on the most northerly island, St Martin's. He's taken hundreds of photographs of the island's breathtaking landscapes, and with the help of his chef from the Seven Stones pub, Paulie, included dozens of recipes using local produce.
I know nothing at all about producing a book. You're a chef, I'm a baker.
But the enthusiastic amateurs pulled it off, and now it's been printed and is ready to be published. All that's left to do is arrange a big launch party on the mainland. The book describes Toby's